My family begged me home for Christmas, then dumped their kids on me, left for a spa trip, so I canceled it, called CPS, and walked away. I've always been the family's backup. My father, a 59-year-old guy, believes that yelling implies leadership. My mother, a 56-year-old woman, is the perennial peacemaker who never challenges him. My sister Lena, a 31-year-old woman, was the ideal child who never had to grow up. She could bat her eyes and avoid doing chores while I mowed lawns in the rain. When our parents were screwed by the 2009 housing meltdown, I was starting my career at a mid-sized computer business that sold software solutions to healthcare providers. The money was not fantastic, but it was consistent. I was living in an apartment with two other guys and trying to pay down my student loans. Then my father called to inform them that they might lose the house. It began with simple tasks like assisting with groceries or bills when money was tight. $100 here will cover the electricity bill there. Not a big thing, right? When Lena divorced her deadbeat spouse, it turned into co-signing for her automobile. Family helps family, my parents repeatedly said. It was only temporary till they got back on their feet. That was 8 years ago. Before I knew it, I was supporting their entire lives while working 60+ hours per week at a job I barely liked. I start calling clients in New York at 6 a.m. and work on West Coast accounts until 7 p.m. I literally placed a little fridge next to my desk because I rarely have time for a lunch break. 5 years in, I was sending them roughly $3,800 each month. Their mortgage totaled $1,615. Utilities cost $420. Lena's car payment is $375. Her kids' activities cost $300. Streaming services cost $75. Cell phones cost $210. Even DoorDash charges $400 because it's difficult to go to the store with kids. Meanwhile, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Miami, sharing walls with college students because that's all I could afford while supporting their lifestyles in Portland. I attempted to bring it up several times. I asked my father if he would look for work. He'd complain about his back problems and how nobody wanted to hire someone his age. I asked my mother if she could work some part-time hours elsewhere. She would cry and declare she needed to be there for Lena's children. When I asked Lena about jobs, she mentioned how difficult it is to get child care even if our parents live with her. Lena's parenting is an absolute joke. In terms of her children, she has the attention span of a goldfish with ADHD. Last Thanksgiving, her daughter had a 102-degree fever, but Lena was too busy sharing toilet selfies to notice. Mom ended up caring for her while Lena went out that night for mental health reasons. When I suggested that staying at home with a sick child could be a priority, my father genuinely remarked, "Your sister has a lot on her plate. She's a single mom." Yeah. Many women do not forsake their feverish children to go get shots with equally useless acquaintances. I once FaceTimed them unannounced. Her 4-year-old was teetering in a chair, attempting to reach peanut butter, while she looked through her phone on the couch. The child nearly face-planted, and she didn't flinch. When I called her out, she chuckled and said, "He's got to learn things sometime. He's 4. Meanwhile, she'd been texting all week about needing money for the kids' winter outfits while sporting a new manicure that wasn't from a DIY kid. Every talk ended the same way. I felt like an awful man for asking. So I stopped asking and just kept paying and working, letting my 30s pass away while they lived in a house I paid for. It all culminated with a phone call at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday in December. I was half asleep when my phone started vibrating. Seeing my father's name appear made my stomach plummet instantly. With him, it's never just a simple, "Hey, how's life?" call. It's usually an emergency or fast favor that ends up costing me hundreds of dollars. I almost didn't answer, to be honest, but I did. He got right to the point and asked if I could come to Portland for Christmas. He stated that having the entire family together would be very important to him. His voice was significantly quieter than usual, which immediately raised red flags. "Your mom misses you," she replied. "And Lena's kids keep asking when Uncle's coming to visit." That was probably not a lie. Despite their circumstances, my niece, a 6-year-old female, and nephew, a 4-year-old male, are good children. They're really the only reason I picked up the phone at all. "I know it's last minute," said the man, "but we really want you here. Family Christmas, you know, like the old days." Against my better judgment, I said yes. Then I booked an expensive flight to Portland, $897 round trip due to holiday pricing. I abandoned everything at work, and even got presents for everyone. I also rented a car despite Dad's advice not to bother. An extra $340 I didn't have to spend. I learned the hard way that relying on them for transportation means being tied to their timetable. I should have known something was up when my father didn't dispute the dates, didn't inquire about my travel information, and didn't even offer to pick me up at the airport. He simply appeared relieved that I had said yes and ended the phone fast. Still, like an idiot, I assumed they wanted to spend time with me. Maybe this time will be different. As soon as I stepped out of PDX, I was assaulted by the strong, wet Portland rain. Due to holiday traffic, I had to wait about 20 minutes for my Uber, and the travel to their location felt longer than the flight itself. When we eventually arrived, I realized that the yard was a complete disaster. Overgrown grass and miscellaneous toys scattered about. One of those inexpensive plastic slides tipped over in the dirt. I had to step over a rusted bike and a deflated pool toy just to get to the front door. When I finally knocked, I was anticipating a grin, a thank you, a hug, and some acknowledgement that I had flown 3,000 miles to see them. Nope. My father opened the door, looked at me for about 2 seconds and smacked me with, "You're going to babysit Lena's kids. We're going on a family vacation." No embrace, not even a greeting. I stood there, drenched on the welcome mat, attempting to understand what he had just spoken. Family trip. Not including myself. Just, what? Then Lena appeared behind him, lugging a duffel bag and looked far too eager. Her 2 children were already dressed in their coats, tracking dirt all over the foyer. She smirked and instructed the children, "Don't snot on your uncle." They all began laughing. Even my mother joined in from the kitchen as if this were a fantastic occasion. The doorway smelt like a wet dog, despite the fact that they don't have one. And there was garbage everywhere. Toys, shoes, and mail were heaped up on the same table they'd had since I was in high school. But the kids were bouncing around, definitely high on sugar. My niece had chocolate on her cheek and was clutching a toy unicorn missing an eye. My nephew was wearing mismatched rain boots and started hopping in place, throwing mud down my already drenched jeans. Mom entered from the kitchen with a travel mug, explaining that they were heading to a resort in Bend for the week. "Beautiful place in the mountains. They have a spa and everything," she was saying. "And you'll have the house to yourself," Lena said, as if it were a perk. "Just need you to watch the kids, they're on winter break from school." My father was already piling suitcases into their SUV, which I helped them purchase last year when their old car died. The one I believe I was still making payments on. It felt weird, like I was seeing a movie about my own life. I just spent over $1,000 on a last-minute airfare and took time off work during our busiest season, all because they coerced me into returning home for Christmas and they were leaving. I stood there with my luggage still in hand as they continued to stuff the car. Like I should be glad for the chance to babysit for a week while they went on a stinking vacation. My mother must have seen my look because she hesitated and said, "Oh, there's plenty of food in the fridge, and the kids' schedules are on the whiteboard in the kitchen." That's when it struck me. This was not a last-minute strategy. This had been the idea all along. They never wanted me home for Christmas. They wanted a free babysitter so they could go out and have fun. I did not yell. I did not have to. I basically laid out what I had done for them. I paid every single charge. I always covered Lena's credit card bill. Every lie I told my landlord when I had to break my lease early because they required money for essential home repairs, which turned out to be a new TV. "So let me get this straight," I muttered. "You called me, asked me to come home for the holidays, made me book an expensive last-minute flight, and now you're all going on vacation while I babysit." My father halted. "It's just for a week. We never get to do anything nice for ourselves." "Never get to?" I couldn't complete the phrase. The audacity was amazing. I took out my phone and opened the banking app. "Let's talk about that. Last month I sent you $1,650 for the mortgage, $420 for utilities, $375 for Lena's car payment, $300 for the kids' activities, $210 for everyone's phone bills, and about $400 for food delivery. That's over $3,000. And that doesn't include the extra $500 Lena asked for when her car needed repairs." Their faces transformed. My mother gazed at the floor. Lena became quite interested in zipping and unzipping her jacket. My father's expression darkened. "We're family," he added, as if that clarified everything. "Family helps family." "Funny how that only goes one way," I said. They assumed I was simply moaning and venting, like I normally do. I figured I'd complain, suck it up and play house for a week while they got massages in Bend. So I gave them the first card. "I quit my job last week." That's when Lena screamed like if I had confessed to murder. My father lost it so quickly that he knocked over the coat rack. My mother held her hands in the air, as if she could reverse the last 5 years with a single gesture. "You what?" my father exclaimed. "How could you be so irresponsible? What about our bills?" "Your bills," I corrected him. "Not mine. And I didn't just quit. I took a new job. Better company, better pay. But there's a catch. I have to be in the office. No more remote work options." I let it sink in. No more remote employment meant no more last-minute trips. No more being at their beck and call. "So, what are you saying?" Lena inquired, her voice suddenly soft. "I'm saying I'm done being your wallet. The new job barely covers my expenses, especially with the cost of living in Miami. There's nothing left to send your way." When I told them I wouldn't be staying to monitor the kids, it didn't register straight away. They simply stood there, blinking, waiting for me to swear I was joking. I was not. "You guys go ahead to your resort," I added, taking out my phone again. "I'll be staying at a hotel downtown." "But the kids," Lena said. "Your responsibility," I concluded for her. "Not mine." My father approached me, pointing his finger at my chest. "Now listen here." "No, you listen," I interrupted him. "For once in your life, just listen." Then I dropped the next bomb. I informed them that the resort reservation was no longer available. Canceled 3 days ago and received a full refund on my credit card. The surprise I'd paid for as a gift a few months ago when Dad suggested wanting to go away. He had not noticed because he had ceased opening his own statements years before. My name appeared on all accounts. I'd set them up that way to assist them rebuild their credit following the foreclosure panic. Lena laughed at first, as if I were lying. Then she opened the resort's app on her phone. Her face became pale as the confirmation faded before her eyes. My mother looked over her shoulder, blinked a few times, and then began asking questions that nobody could answer. Lena muttered, "How is this possible?" "Same way I've been paying your bills for years," I explained. "With my money, my accounts, my credit cards that you all seem to think have unlimited funds." Then came the airline portion. I informed them that the flights had been redirected. No refunds. That would have been too easy. I had the credit moved to my own name through an account I'd formed months before, anticipating this very occasion. "You can't do that," my father exclaimed. "That's our vacation." "No," I corrected him once again. "I paid for this trip, so it's mine. I decided to cancel it." My father exclaimed, "This is fraud." I reminded him that it wasn't fraud if the card was in my name. All those improvements and bills he hadn't paid in a year, the entire house, food, Lena's car payment, it all went through me. He merely wrote his name and accepted the credit. But the highlight was what I put on the table next. A folded letter from Chase Bank, a polite reminder that I had ceased making automated mortgage payments 3 weeks ago. I wanted to see how long it would take them to notice. They did not. The kitchen smelt like burnt coffee, and their faces looked like they'd just seen their winning lottery ticket shredded. I'm not going to lie, it felt amazing. Years of being treated like an open wallet, and now I was finally closing it. "You can't do this to us," my mother pleaded with tears in her eyes. "We're your family." "Family doesn't treat each other like this," was my response. "Family doesn't lie and manipulate to get what they want." "It wasn't a lie," Lena protested softly. "We did want you here for Christmas." "As a babysitter," I told her, "not as a brother or son." My father was pacing now, running his hands through his thinning hair. "So, are you just going to let the bank take our house? Let's end up on the street? Is this what you want?" "What I want," I replied carefully, making sure every word was heard, "is for you all to accept responsibility for your own lives. Get a job, pay your own bills. Stop treating me like an infinite resource that you can use whenever you want." The living room was silent, save for the kids, who had gone on to fighting over a toy in the corner. My nephew began crying, but no one attempted to soothe him. They were all too horrified by what was going on. "I've been preparing this for months," I added, "and I have spreadsheets that document every dime I've given you over the last 5 years. It's more than $175,000. Do you get that? I could have purchased my own home, started a family, and invested in my future. Instead, I've been investing in yours, and you can't even be bothered to thank me when I walk in the door." Lena's phone rang. She glanced at it and became even more concerned. "The hotel has just sent a cancellation confirmation," she murmured. "Yep," I said. "I called them this morning." The doorbell rang while Lena was pacing in circles, attempting to phone the resort. Everyone froze. No one was expecting visitors but me, and I had planned this to the hour. I assured them not to worry, it wasn't the bank yet. My father opened the door and strode a tall woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a badge around her neck, introducing herself as Karen from Child Protective Services. Lena's face became absolutely white. You see, I called CPS 3 weeks ago and told them what I saw during our last video call. The kids left alone in the backyard without coats, one crying while Lena smoked on the porch, scrolling through her phone. I had screenshots, dates, and times, including the time my nephew fell and got a bloody nose while Lena was inside taking a nap, and the time my niece had what appeared to be cigarette burns on her stuffed animals. CPS had started a silent case and was currently making a home visit. I gave Karen a pleasant smile and told her I was the uncle in town for the holidays, offering to show her the kitchen, refrigerator and nursery, while Lena stood there transfixed, clutching her useless plane tickets. We've received some concerning reports, Karen continued, her voice professional yet friendly. I'm just here to check in and see how everyone's doing. We're fine, my father answered quickly, attempting to hide her view of the living room. Just having a family discussion. I can see that, she said, staring at the baggage beside the door. Were you going somewhere? Vacation, my mother swiftly said. But we're reconsidering. Karen nodded and asked if she may come in and look around. My father hesitated, but she reminded him that she could return with a court order if necessary, so he stood aside. The house conveyed the full story. The kitchen sink was stacked high with dishes, empty energy drink cans sat on the counter, and peanut butter was smeared on the wall near the dining table. When Karen asked to see where the kids slept, I stepped aside and let her see for herself. The kids' room was worse than I remembered from my last visit, with clothes everywhere and sheets that had clearly not been washed in weeks. A sippy cup that used to be milk was now growing something fuzzy and green. The bathroom had black mildew in the shower's corners, and the medicine cabinet was open, leaving prescription bottles easily accessible to young hands. I spotted something I hadn't noticed before, a duct-taped breach in the window that let chilly air in. It's no surprise my niece coughed during our last video conference. The room was chilling. Lena abruptly flipped the switch to the concerned mother, claiming she hadn't had time to clean because they were packing, that she always gave specific instructions and would never go on vacation without ensuring her children's safety, and that we had agreed to everything months before. I didn't react, just stared at Karen, who inquired whether I had any messages or texts from Lena confirming my availability to watch the kids. I took out my phone and handed it to her. Lena's most recent message was from 2 days ago. Can you pick up some shampoo from Miami, the kind you bought me last time? There was no mention of babysitting. It was just another demand, as usual. I caught my father's eye across the room, and for the first time in my life, I saw something new. He was watching his house of cards collapse in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He was terrified, not angry or disappointed. Karen took notes on her notepad and asked a few more questions regarding the children's routines, medical treatment, and school attendance. Lena stuttered through her responses, contradicting herself several times. My parents tried to intervene and cover for her, but it only made matters worse. So you're saying you oversee the kids when your daughter isn't available? Karen questioned my mother. Yes, of course, my mother responded. But were you going to leave them with their uncle for a week while you all went on vacation? My mother faltered. Well, he is. He's very responsible. I see, Karen remarked, writing something down. And Mr. Stevens, she asked my father. Are you currently employed? His face lost its color. I have some back problems that make it difficult to work. Are you on disability then? She pressed. We're working on the paperwork, he claimed. Karen jotted another note. And who is the principal financial supporter for this household? Everyone looked at me, and I just shrugged. I've been helping out, I added, deliberately ambiguous. But I recently changed jobs, so that's coming to an end. The rest of the inspection went about as well as you'd expect. Karen checked the fridge, which was nearly empty except for condiments and some expired yogurt. She inquired about smoke detectors, one of which was chirping due to a low battery. And she observed the children, who were clearly unaccustomed to regular routines and discipline. My mother was sitting on the couch with her head in her hands, and my father was resting against the wall with his arms crossed. By the end, Lena was in tears, not the manipulative ones she typically used to get her way, but genuine fearful sobs. Karen gave them a checklist of what needed to be done and said she'd be back in 48 hours for a follow-up. She mentioned some resources for parenting classes and career assistance programs, and then went. but not before giving me her card and asking me to phone if I had any further problems. After she departed, I picked up my suitcase and no one stopped me or asked me to stay. I told my father I'd stay at their house for 2 nights until I could move into my new apartment, just as any other person would. He stared at me as if I'd personally attacked him and said no, saying I wasn't welcome anymore and had humiliated them. And if you think you're better than us, you can prove it from somewhere else. After everything you've done, he snarled, his voice quivering with wrath. You think you can just stay here, under my roof? I almost chuckled at the irony, his roof, which I'd been paying for. I looked at my mother, she didn't say anything, and Lena was still hiding with the kids. It was exactly what I expected. They'd exploited me for as long as they could, and now that I wasn't playing along, I was disposable. So I nodded, didn't fight, simply picked up my barely unzipped luggage and went out. No spectacular exit, no big speech, just a guy leaving a house that never truly belonged to him. Then I drove to my new place, which they had no idea existed. A 1-bedroom downtown condo on the 12th floor, with a view of the city I had grown up in but never truly enjoyed. It was clean, minimal, and fully paid for. I had been discreetly arranging this relocation for almost a year, while still transferring the money. 6 months ago, I made a decision. Instead of providing them more money whenever they asked for it, I started putting it aside in a different account that they had no idea about. I began establishing a safety net for myself, not for them. I found a real estate agent who helped me identify a foreclosure that I could get for a deal, and I used every penny I had saved to buy it outright, with no mortgage, loan, or monthly payment. The place still smelled of fresh paint, the floors were cold, the fridge was empty, and there were no sheets on the bed, but it was mine. No one else had the keys. I put my bag in the closet and stood there for a moment, hearing nothing. No TV, no kids shouting, and no one asking for a favor, a loan, or just a little assistance till payday. For the first time in years, I was solely accountable for myself. I was standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights, when I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It took me a minute to understand it was relief, pure and unfiltered. The following day I went shopping and bought food, sheets, towels, a quality coffee maker, and everything else you need when you're starting over. I spent the afternoon setting up my house, arranging furniture, hanging a few photos, and making it seem like home. Since I'd left, my phone had been inundated with texts and calls, the majority of which followed the same pattern. Rage, threats, guilt, and bargaining, all classic manipulation tactics. From Dad, you have destroyed this family, I hope you are happy. From Mom, please call us, we need to figure this out. From Lena, the children are crying because they don't understand why Uncle departed. The last one almost got me. But then I remembered how easily they were willing to dump those same kids on me while they were on vacation, and how those tears were being used against me again. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb and concentrated on establishing my new life. The next morning I received a text from Lena asking if she could come over alone and apologize. And for some reason, I responded, sure. Maybe it was because she was the only one who appeared to be capable of changing, or maybe I just needed closure. I gave her the address but told her she just had 1 hour, not a minute more. When she arrived, she appeared smaller, with her hair in a loose bun, little makeup, and no phone in her hand. She entered the apartment and began looking about. This is really nice, she said. I didn't thank her. Instead, I motioned to the couch and asked if she wanted coffee. She nodded, and I noticed her hands were shaking. How long have you owned this place? She inquired as I handed her a drink. Closed on it 3 months ago, I told you. Been setting it up little by little. So you never mentioned anything? Would it have mattered? Would you have been pleased for me, or would you have found a way to utilize it for yourself? She did not respond, but stared into her coffee. She apologized for everything, planning to dump the kids on me, acting as if I wasn't doing enough, texting, asking for money like it was nothing, and even laughing when I walked in the door. We became used to you repairing everything, she said. Mom and Dad were expecting it. I expected it. It seemed natural. Until you stopped playing along. I told her that while I appreciated it, I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened, and that apologizing wouldn't help unless she changed. I know, she admitted gently. That's why I applied for a job yesterday. It astonished me. What type of job? There's nothing fancy, receptionist in a dental office, but it is something. They told me I could start next week if my references checked up. That's good, I answered sincerely. How about the kids? Mom will watch them throughout my shifts. Dad is looking into some handyman labor. Nothing is permanent, but it's a start. I nodded, trying not to get my hopes up. They had made promises before. Before she departed, she mentioned that she and the kids were residing at a Motel 6. She was thinking about obtaining her own apartment once she had more paychecks under her belt, and she seemed serious. I encouraged her because it would be beneficial for the children to have their own place. She paused at the threshold. CPS is coming back tomorrow. Karen stated that we needed to clean the house, acquire groceries, and repair the smoke detector. I don't suppose. I shake my head. No more bailouts, Lena. You all need to sort this out for yourselves. She nodded in disappointment, but not surprise. Worth a shot, she murmured with a sorrowful smile, before leaving and quietly closing the door behind her. That night, I received a voicemail from my father from an unknown phone. If you believe this is over, you are dumber than I imagined. You want to disgrace this family? You'll see how it feels. But I was already in front of him. The next morning, I went to the mortgage lender and legally removed my name from everything linked with the house. I didn't want it repossessed. I wanted them to own everything. The late payments, the growing interest, the collection phone calls. I entered into my bank account and canceled 3 planned transfers: groceries, phone plan, and Lena's auto insurance, all in 2 clicks. It felt like severing the last threads of a puppet I had been dancing for years. I forwarded my father's threatening message to a legal friend who encouraged me to document everything in case things escalated. I changed the passwords on all of my accounts, set up credit monitoring to ensure no one could open anything in my name, and blocked his phone number. For the next week, the texts kept flowing, alternating between wrath and desperation. My mother emailed a snapshot of an empty fridge with the comment, "Please." My father had a friend phone me and say I was killing them slowly by cutting them off. Lena supplied images of earlier discussions in which I vowed to always be there for the kids. What they didn't realize was that 3 months prior, I had secretly filed a report with a government housing program detailing how my money was subsidizing their lives while the children were mistreated. And yesterday, while they were still squabbling about who should call me first, they received a formal evaluation of their eligibility for child support programs, housing assistance, and disability benefits, in the form of a letter that began, "We regret to inform you," and ended, "Subject to investigation." Lena texted me at 10:23 p.m., with just one word. Why? I ignored her since they had brought me across the nation to babysit their mess, and all I did was return it to them, one piece at a time. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new life, getting the internet set up, buying a decent TV, starting to prepare genuine meals rather than just grabbing whatever was easiest after a hard day of work, and even joining a nearby gym. It turns out that when you're not always worried about where your next financial emergency will come from, you have more energy for things like self-care. My supervisor called to check in, shocked that I was taking the entire week off. "Is everything well with the family?" he asked. I assured him things had changed, but I was fine. Better than good, honestly. I spent Christmas Day alone, watching movies, ordering Chinese cuisine, and video calling 2 college pals I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I didn't have to pretend everything was good, or arbitrate any arguments. Just peace. It's been a month, and life is quieter. My apartment feels lived in, my belongings are where I want them, and I wake up without that knot of anxiety in my chest when I see certain names on my phone. Last week I received a letter with no return address, only my name and my mother's handwriting. Inside came a check for $750 and a note that said, "We're doing all we can." I haven't paid it yet. I'm waiting to see if the effort is genuine, or if it's simply fleeting remorse. Lena honored her promise. Surprisingly, she is now working full-time at that dentist's office. She shared a photo of her kids smiling in a real living room, with a rug, a couch, and coloring books spread out. There is no mess, no anxiety behind their eyes like before, and she is renting a little 2-bedroom in a different part of town. My parents are still at home, but they are both working part-time. Dad is doing maintenance at an apartment complex, which turns out isn't so awful for his back when it's the only alternative. Mom cleans houses. We don't chat directly, just send short notes, and that's all I want for now. I'm not ready for anything else. Maybe eventually, but not now. As for my father, nothing. Not a text, not a murmur. People like him don't apologize. They wait for the world to bend back to them. I don't bend anymore. I obtained a raise at work, started going to the gym 4 times a week, and discovered that instead of pouring your life savings into someone else's never-ending pit of needs, you can actually build something for yourself. I ran into Karen from CPS at a downtown coffee shop yesterday. She recognized me and asked how I was doing. I told her things were much better, and she smiled and said she was glad to hear it. She said the family was also making progress, and the follow-up visits showed real improvement. The house was clean, the kids were in a routine, and there was actual food in the refrigerator. Your sister mentions you sometimes, she stated. I think she misses you. Maybe that's true. And maybe I miss some of them as well. The possibility of what we could have been as a family if money and manipulation hadn't ruined everything. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just played along that day, if I had kept an eye on those kids and let them go on vacation. Then I tell myself that it would not have been just that day, but every day, forever. Thank you for the prizes and support. Here are some typical questions. 1. The children are safe. CPS is still watching the situation, but it is improving. 2. I haven't spoken to my father since that day and don't intend to. 3. Yeah, I kept all of the gifts I got. Hey Reddit, it's been 3 months since I walked out of my parents' house and urged them to start fending for themselves. Remember my father's threats after that? It turns out the dude wasn't lying. 2 weeks ago my bank's fraud department contacted someone who attempted to send $12,000 to an offshore account using my identity, which they stopped. But when I checked my credit report, I saw 6 hard inquiries from loan applications I had never completed. Someone was trying to incur big debt in my name. That was simply a warm-up. Next, this guy created a Gmail account with my complete identity and began contacting my clients, claiming I was stealing company data and selling it to competitors. Before I knew what was going on, 3 clients contacted my company, and I was hauled into an emergency legal call. Fortunately, my boss had my back, but I still spent 48 hours performing damage control. That's when I stopped reacting and began handling the situation. We hired a lawyer and spent 2 days tracing everything back to my father. The moron used his own equipment and even placed his personal email address as recovery for the bogus accounts. Pure boomer evil. And that was it. I filed charges for identity theft, fraud, and slander. Yesterday, cops arrived at my parents' house with a warrant and seized every electronic gadget. He is now facing potential jail time. Mom has been blowing up my phone, urging me to lower the charges. Lena, surprise, just said, "Do what you need to do." And that was it. I believe she has now realized how far off the rails the old man has gone. I'm not dropping anything. He attempted to ruin my credit and get me fired because I quit being his safety net. The court date is next month, and the lawyer claims the case is a slam dunk. I've also frozen my credit, switched banks and placed security cameras at my home, not taking any chances.